Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to episode 10 of Grimm Tuesdays. Today I am going to be reviewing the tale called Faithful John. So this was a really entertaining story, if I was to be honest. I wasn't expecting it to go in the direction that it eventually did go. So this revolves around our main character, who I'm pretty sure this is one of the first characters in the Grimm fairy tales mythos or universe or whatever that has actually been given a name. So John is the servant of the most recent king, and he is called faithful not because he is a very religious person. I'm sure he is. I'm sure he believes in God, but that's not what the word faithful means in this story. It basically means that John is a very loyal and dedicated individual. So because John is a very, very loyal servant towards this king, we find out that this king is on his deathbed and his son is about to inherit the throne. So on the king's deathbed, he tells John, I leave you totally responsible to raise my son. And he also tells John that he is free to let his son wander around the castle, and he tells John, look, you are more than welcome to show him every room in the castle, apart from this one room, which I believe is down the long hallway. And he says that you can show him any room in the whole castle, but not this one specific room. And then John says, why? Why can't I show him this room? Why can't I open the door and let him into this one specific room in this vast castle? So the king tells John that there is a painting of a woman in this specific room that if the prince looks upon it, even just glancing at it, he will become completely and totally obsessed with this individual. And at this point I was thinking, well, if you know that this painting has that power over people, then why would you have it in your building? It's the same thing as the Mirror of Erised in the first Harry Potter book. I'm like, well, if you know that this mirror can actually show people their deepest desires and has such a strong effect to them that potentially will drive them insane and mad, then why would you have it in the building? So after the king dies, John is showing the prince who has become king all over the castle and in all the rooms, but the prince knows that there is this one specific room that he hasn't gone into, and he asks John why this is the case, and he pretty much says that he promised the prince's father on his deathbed that he wouldn't allow his son to go into that one specific room. So pretty much the prince just stands there and sulks like a little boy and says, right, I'm not going to move from this spot until you open a door and let me into this room. So John reluctantly agrees to this, and in his mind he's thinking, right, if I open the door and I run to the painting and I throw like a cloth over it and hide the painting from the prince, then everything will be okay. But ultimately that didn't actually happen. The prince saw the painting of this, I think, a princess from a kingdom called the Golden Kingdom or the Golden Castle or something along them lines. And at first glance, he is completely obsessed by how beautiful the princess is, and he is completely fixated on finding her and marrying her without even knowing if she's a horrible individual. I mean, she could be very, very attractive, but she could be a horrible human being underneath all that. I mean, it completely baffles me, it really does. So the king and John go off onto a ship to sail to this Golden Kingdom. And the reason why it's referred to as that is because this castle and the princess is completely obsessed with golden objects. And because the king has got all these golden objects on his ship to try to win her affections, and she agrees to go back with him to his kingdom and ultimately marry him. But while on the ship sailing back to his kingdom, John discovers and finds these, I think, 3 crows that come down and talk to him, and I'm not sure if they talk to him directly or whether he overhears them. But they are talking about these 3 separate events that will happen in the king's life that will ultimately kill him. But if anyone tells him about this or warns him about it, then he will ultimately be turned into stone, or that individual that warned the king about these events. So John is completely fixated on remaining loyal to the new king and protecting him. And the first instance is, it's foretold that the king will be riding a horse and the horse will go mad and throw the king off and he will die or hurt himself. So at first glance, John gets a gun and shoots the horse dead. And on the second event, I'm pretty sure there is this golden cloak or wedding groom cloak thing that he destroys. I'm not entirely sure why, but that's what he does. And on the third event, which doesn't really affect the king at all, but it's foretold that on one night the new queen will collapse, apparently dead, and the only way to save her life is to drain 3 drops of blood from her body and she will miraculously come back to life. So when John does this, the king is completely shocked by what John has actually done, even though the queen has got up and she appears to be okay. So John ultimately tells the king about these events, and as a result, he is turned into a statue. His whole body has been turned into stone after confronting the king with these events. And after this, the king is completely saddened by this, as he sees John as his faithful servant, as his loyal companion or friend. So he puts the statue of John in his bedchamber, at the foot of his bed, I'm pretty sure. And then as time goes on, the king and the queen have 2 small boys, and one day they're all playing around it, and I'm pretty sure the queen has gone off doing something else. So the king and the 2 sons are playing around the statue of John, and he's asking the statue of John what he can basically do to bring him back to life. And this results in something very tragic happening. I'm pretty sure the king is asked to cut the heads off his 2 boys and completely decapitate his 2 sons. And then after he does this, John has turned back into his human form, and he gets both the severed heads of both these little boys, puts them back onto the bodies, and then they are reattached. They are attached to their bodies and they come back to life and they're completely fine. This was probably even more shocking than hearing these fact that these 2 boys had their heads cut off. But no, it was even more shocking when John came back to life and grabbed the heads and put them back on their bodies, and they grew back and the boys became alive again and they were fine. And the king told his queen what happened and what John did, and pretty much they lived happily ever after. So this was a really interesting story. It really was. It kind of reminds me a lot about the last story in episode 9, which was called The Woodcutter's Child, as this one seemed to have some sort of, I wouldn't say Christian elements, but it had a strong element of having faith in someone. Not just a God figure, but having faith in another human being, and how somebody can portray their loyalty to someone and show how loyal they are to that individual. So yeah, I really like this story. As I said, it was really interesting. Very shocking, it really was at the end, with the 2 boys But that's what I've come to expect from reading the stories from the brothers, that they have all these charming stories, but they give you something really outrageous and really shocking that you wasn't expecting. So once again, let me know if you read this as a child. Let me know if you have heard of this story, and we can discuss it more in detail down below in the comments. Please feel free to look at all the other episodes of this Grimm Tuesday series I've done. I've created a whole playlist dedicated to it. So with all that out of the way, have a great day, read some awesome books, and I will see you all in my next video.